Have you ever heard the saying that the last 20% of a project takes 80% of the time? That's where we're at right now. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the last 20% of the 6.4 Hemi swap into my Jeep Wrangler JK. We have the engine in, the transmission, the transfer case, the wiring, and in the last video, we even did a test fire to make sure all systems were go. So, in this video, hopefully it's gonna be the last one where we're actually wrenching and working on the 6.4. It's coming to a close. So we have a table full of products here, a bunch of really good stuff from Holley Performance, a power steering cooler, stuff for our radiator, a catch can, intake, and a bunch of other odds and ends over here. It does look like a lot of stuff, and there are a ton of projects that we're gonna have to complete in this video, so let's get started. One of the first things we're knocking out in the garage tonight is arguably one of the most important parts of a V8 swap, especially a Hemi. We are stuffing a big engine into a small engine bay, and that can create a lot of heat. Upgrading your cooling system is extremely important. I'm using a CSF aluminum radiator for this swap. It is designed for Hemi swaps into a Jeep Wrangler, so everything's laid out correctly. It's a full aluminum radiator, it's extremely big, and it should have no problem keeping our Hemi cool. Now, a radiator is only half of the formula. I have a Camaro electric fan over here. This is an amazing fan. It puts out a ton of air, and it's really, really good for these Hemi swaps. Now, in order to mount a Camaro fan into my Jeep, I picked up a Jeep Speed Shop Camaro fan shroud. Now, here's a little info about the setup. We're looking for a 16 to 21 Camaro fan or a CTSV. Here are both of the part numbers. That is for the fan. We don't need the plastic shroud, just the motor and the fan blade. This is going to allow us to run the Camaro fan in our Jeep setup with no issues. This is a very simple setup, and if you buy the fan shroud and radiator from Jeep Speed Shop, it is going to be completely bolt-in. However, if you buy them separately, we are going to have to weld our own mounting tabs so this can fit on our radiator. Like I mentioned in the last video, Jeep Speed Shop is doing 10% off if you call in to order parts for your swap using the code JK Gear and Gadgets, or just telling me you've been watching the video. So the first thing we have to do is get this fan shroud set up and mounted onto our radiator so we can start getting that installed on the Jeep. First, we're gonna mount the electric fan onto the shroud. Then we're gonna put the shroud on the radiator mocked up in place. We're gonna grab our tabs, put them on the mounting locations, tack weld them in, and then fully weld them in. Once we know they're in the right spot, we can repaint all of the areas that we welded on, and then test fit the entire front clip onto the Jeep. Don't make the same mistake that I just did. If you wanna keep your AC, we have to reinstall our AC evaporator on the front of our new radiator before we install it on this core support. Sadly, I have to take all this back off to install the evaporator and then put it all back on. But there is one other thing we might have to do. Since we're installing a much larger engine, there's not gonna be much clearance up here. In my case, since I'm running the 6.4, I'm gonna push the lower half of the grill out just to make sure we have plenty of clearance down here from our electric fan setup. I got 4 of these little spacers at the hardware store, and I'm just gonna put them right there so it spaces out our grill about 3/4 of an inch. That should be good. Oh, I know, everybody's gonna be giving me crap. Ben, you're so dumb. Well, easy mistake, but everything is back on. Guys, it is so tight between the radiator and engine. I'm not gonna lie. Look at that gap. Like, you can't even see it, but it is so tight in there. So if I am like ever on the side of the road and have to change my serpentine belt, I have no clue what I'm gonna have to do. There might be a way to sneak your hand up in there and change it, or just pull all of this off, which would really suck. So with that in place, there's really nothing hard about it. It's just kind of hard getting your fingers back in there and everything. Now, as for the radiator hoses, Jeep Speed Shop does give us a part number to order from Napa. I cross-referenced that and got some silicone radiator hoses. I think these are off like a Ford F100 from like the 70s or something, but we are just gonna have to trim them, cut it up here, and mount it. But for the most part, they're pretty close. Now the lower one, which is like right there, oh my gosh, that's gonna be hard to get on. So I'm gonna go ahead, chop these, hook up those, and then we are pretty much done up here for now. We're gonna wire up the fan later, just because we have so much other stuff that we need to start bolting on and get ready to go. So, man, this project would be so much nicer with 2 people. A lot of people are probably wondering, where's Cassie? Well, Cassie's up in North Carolina for 2 weeks. She is coming down. She should be back here in 2 days, probably once the engine swap is completely done. So that's just my luck. But if I can do it by myself 100%, you guys can do it with some good friends. Every time. Like, I rarely ask my friends for help, but when I do, they're always busy. So, yeah, just my luck. All right, let's keep on going. And that's it, right there. The hardest part of this Hemi swap so far is getting these radiator hoses on. So the upper one isn't too bad. It's really not bad. I mean, it's right here. But that lower radiator hose is horrible. Hardest part of this entire swap so far is the lower radiator hose. So it's in there. We'll see. I don't really know how well it's in there. There's just no room to get up in there, and you can't get up in there from underneath. It might be the fact that I'm running the silicone hose, so maybe in the future I'll try a rubber hose, but honestly, I don't, if I have to change the hose again, selling the Jeep, done. But no, so far that is the hardest part. Now, the next step, what we're gonna tackle next is making some fuel lines. So we have our evap system, right? This is what, kind of purges the gas tank, gets those fumes out of there. This was over here on the passenger side of the Jeep. So what a lot of people do is just reuse these nylon lines. These are the factory ones, but they're very hard. You really can't bend them and make a clean looking setup. So we have one that goes to the intake and a long one that goes down under to our fuel tank. So it's gonna sit here, one's gonna go down to the fuel tank, and the other one is gonna go over right here to our intake. So I'll be making those lines with AN line and AN fittings just to get a nice, easy to install setup and look really clean. So what we're gonna need is a 3/8 female quick disconnect, a 3/8 male quick disconnect, which goes down to the fuel side, a 5/16 female quick disconnect, and then a 3/8 hose barb. This is what's gonna go onto the intake there. So I'm gonna go ahead, measure the lines, build these, and then get this evap installed. So I just realized Cassie should probably come home soon. It's been a little bit. You ready to hear this? All my iPhone guys, you can actually do some really cool stuff.
Oh yeah, baby. You stuck that in so good.
Whoa, what? Cassie, you gotta hurry home. Going crazy. Now that we have the evap all set up, good to go, we can take a look at some of the aftermarket items we're adding to the Hemi swap. Now the good thing is that a lot of this is gonna be the same for the 3.8 or 3.6 Jeep Wranglers. What I'm talking about, earlier I mentioned that I got a bunch of good stuff from Holley Performance, and one of those items is the B&M power steering cooler. The really nice thing about this is it's an extremely clean setup, which you'll see here shortly. You can pair it with their transmission cooler, and it is a phenomenal kit. We have bolt-in brackets that are nice powder coated, and everything we need to have a really clean setup on our Jeep. Adding a power steering cooler is great for our system. Once we install bigger tires and start going off-road, our power steering fluid can get really, really hot, and that's a quick way to burn up your pump. Now, luckily, for some reason, somehow, I've managed to get away with it at this point. Even with the hydro assist, I have no idea how. Maybe I just have some magical pump. But with the Hemi, it's almost like mandatory, especially since I have to extend the line over there. I might as well add a cooler in there. And if you're thinking about adding a cooler to your Jeep, I would definitely check out this system. And if you have an automatic transmission, it's even nicer with that bracket. Now, I do have their transmission cooler coming. It's running a little bit late, so in the meantime, I'm gonna have to put a little cheap Amazon one in there, but I'm excited for you guys to see how clean this setup is. So we have the instructions here. It's gonna be a very simple install. I'm gonna have to do it a little bit different compared to other Jeep owners of the factory engine, but you'll get the gist of it. Let's get this in. This is a really clean setup. As you guys can tell, the install is not that bad at all, and it is nice and secure. It's gonna look really good when the transmission cooler comes in and we have them both side by side. The transmission cooler is a little bit bigger, so it's gonna fill that void. Now, since we're on the topic of cooling, the three things we really wanna cool is our engine with our radiator, our power steering fluid, and our transmission fluid. So tonight, I'll probably just throw in the cheap Amazon one until the B&M comes in. Now, there is something I want to point out. So here's our factory JK radiator. Check this out. It's like the width of one finger, whereas our new Hemi swap radiator, easily 2+. So this is definitely going to keep this engine nice and cool. I've seen people try to reuse the factory JK ones. It is not a good idea. Just go with the aftermarket. Heat is a big issue with these Hemi swaps. I think I'm gonna call it a night. I've got a lot of stuff done, and I'll probably mess around, get the transmission cooler in, just the Amazon one, and there's really nothing special about that. But what is special is these power steering lines. So these are like 200 bucks, man. These are made for a Grand Cherokee. I'll throw the part number in there, but it's gonna work with the modification that we did to our transmission earlier. I will see you guys tomorrow, and we'll keep on working on the Hemi swap. Last night I was able to get the transmission cooler all hooked up, so that is done. But I wanna show you guys the difference between a quality cooler and something like just the universal ones on Amazon. So here's the B&M one. As you can tell, a lot more heavy duty than this guy. Plus, I'm not a big fan of how this mounts. Just those little push ties. However, it's gonna work temporarily until we can get the B&M transmission cooler to come in. Plus, the B&M one is a lot bigger than this. It almost takes up this entire space. However, this will work for now, and the lines are gonna be in the same spot. So I will go ahead and say that these hard lines from the Grand Cherokee, after installing them, I'd say they're worth the money. You know, they fit really good. It's a really clean install. It hugs it all, like everything is up in there nice, and it works really well with the swap. So with that done, like guys, that is almost it for like the technical portion of the Hemi swap. What we have here and what's left to do in the swap is kind of like optional. So exhaust, there's a lot of different ways you could do this exhaust. Some people will just at this point take it to an exhaust shop and say, hey, build my exhaust. What I'm gonna do is build it here in my garage. Like I mentioned earlier, got a bunch of good stuff from Holley. This is the Holley Hooker muffler. So this is their Aero Chamber Street Series. This thing sounds so freaking good with V8s. It's like very deep, but it's not raspy or drony. It's an extremely nice muffler. It's very well built, and it has a really, really cool design to it. Now, we're gonna be installing that as well as some Flowmaster high flow catalytic converters. These are gonna be perfect for this swap. You know, keeping the O2 sensors happy and still keeping it street legal. Behind that, we have a like a little crossover Y pipe, 2.5 inlets to 3 out. So the idea for this swap is running 2.5-inch pipes down, then collecting and going 3-inch all the way back. So this is a 3-inch muffler. Now to go along with that, we got some exhaust clamps here we're gonna weld on. These are really, really nice. And then I also went ahead and picked up an exhaust builder's kit, both 2.5 and 3-inch with all types of bends so I can build my own exhaust. Now, I also have a set of MSD coils. So these are coil packs for the Hemi. A lot of you guys know that whenever I did the coil packs on the Jeep Gladiator, which is right out there, I really liked the performance of the coil packs. I did notice a little bit. However, the RIP coil packs already had one go bad. Now with MSD, they've been around for a very long time. They're a great ignition company, and they've been making these for the Hemis for quite a while. I'm gonna hold off on installing these. I kind of want to drive the Jeep without them. That way when we install it, we can see if there's any kind of noticeable difference. So we're gonna keep these here, but we're not gonna put them in yet. I also decided to go ahead and get a new catch can for the Hemi. I did have my DIY one over there, but I got this on not Amazon, eBay. I think it's one of the big like catch can companies, I think JLT or something, and it was highly discounted on eBay. And I think the reason for that is when I got it, this centerpiece right here was like anodized pink, completely different color. So that's probably why it's marked down. All I did was just go ahead and paint it black. I thought red was gonna look kind of good in here. I don't know, it might look a little cheesy. What do you guys think? I mean, it looks decent, but it's gonna be a very clean install, and it wasn't too expensive. So with a brand new engine, I wanted the catch can. I've seen how much oil those things catch, not only on the 3.8, but also on the 3.6 in the Gladiator. So I'm a big fan of catch cans, very simple design, and you know, just keeps oil out of the intake. So we have a lot of stuff to do, and a lot of this, I'm not gonna explain how to do it. So for the exhaust building, if I was to show you how to do it with the Hemi, that would be like a 50-minute video. There's a lot to it, and if this is something that you're not really comfortable with, take it to an exhaust shop. However, I'll give you some highlights on how I plan to do it. I also had to pick up a new coolant reservoir tank this morning from AutoZone, just because our factory one sat right there, and we have to run it over here where we have space now. So what I'm gonna do, kind of just mocked it up over here in the corner, like right there. Just gonna drill out here, put some nut certs in, and then it's gonna sit like that and run a hose over to our radiator cap. So far, as you guys can tell, it's going really good. This might be like the last weekend of working on it. That's the plan at least. Now, the one thing I haven't talked about yet is our intake setup. So with the 6.4, the intake comes over to the driver's side. The 5.7 comes straight out, and you can run it over towards like the OEM location. Now, there are a few aftermarket intakes where the like throttle body sits straight, and you can go either way. They're a little bit expensive. I think Edelbrock makes one, AAV makes one. Holley makes like a really nice aftermarket intake that's it's like a sheet metal fabricated intake. I'll insert a picture. I might eventually go to that. I don't know, we'll find out. But for now, how I have it routed is just over here on the passenger side or on the driver's side. And to do that, I went ahead and picked up so 3.5 inch, 100% real carbon fiber tubing. So I didn't want that like shiny aluminum in here. I think it would look kind of cheesy. So I went with the carbon fibers, 50 bucks. I went ahead and cut it, came in a straight section, and I got a 90-degree coupler. And since this is technically more than a 90-degree bend, I had to chop it in half and then kind of just wiggle this around until it sat straight there. Now, this freaking air filter, guys, this is like one of the only online purchases that I've regretted in a while. Got this on eBay. It's like, oh, nice air filter, like 15 bucks, cool. Well, I didn't read the like description, but look how small that is. And of course, in the picture, they made it look huge. So this is gonna work for now, but this is definitely not enough air filter for a 6.4 Hemi. So we'll go with a bigger air filter here in a little bit, but I mean, this will work for now just to mock it up. But she's kind of cute right there. So this is kind of the only intake option I could figure out for the time being. I think it's gonna work. Now for the intake, we do have to add our PCV connection. It's like the vacuum part that goes into the intake, as well as our intake air temp sensor. And both of those I'm just gonna drill in this, in the silicone, and throw a little grommet in there. So let's get working, guys. I think the first things we're gonna do today, we'll get the catch can in. So yeah, we'll do catch can, cooler or coolant reservoir, and we still have to wire up our fan, our Camaro fan. So I'll go over the wiring on that here in a little bit. It's pretty easy. There's a handful of wires we have to tap into the Jeep, but it's really not bad at all. All right, guys, let's get cranking. All right, we got the catch can installed. Actually looks pretty good in here, I'm not gonna lie. We also have the coolant tank installed. It's a little bit sideways, but honestly, that is the least of my worries. So the next big step is wiring up the Camaro fan. There's a few things we need. So we had to buy the Camaro fan. You can get it new or used, however you wanna do that. We had to get the fan shroud from Jeep Speed Shop, and we have to get a fan controller. So got this from Jeep Speed Shop as well. It's a Lingenfelter VSFM002. So what this does is pretty much control our fan. So since we're running a GM fan, we can't let the Jeep, you know, kind of run it anymore because it's a completely different style. Now there is some wiring we have to do to this, but overall it's pretty simple. Here's a basic layout. Ignore all the wire colors for now, but pretty much what we have to do on our fan is run it to ground and to our fused 12-volt power. So that's gonna be going directly to the battery in a way. Now, the Camaro fan, they're not labeled polarity. I'm gonna show you a picture, and I went ahead and labeled the back of that, which one's positive and which one's negative. So we're just gonna extend those cables to positive and negative. So I went ahead and did that over here. As you can tell, fan wires come up here. We have 3 wires. One of them, instead of a fused link, I put a little circuit breaker, mounted it right there onto our fan shroud, so it's nice and secure and it's easy right there to get to. And then I went ahead and routed the other leg over to our positive side of the battery. The negative, extended it and ran it to this ground right here behind the tank. Now this third little wire right here coming off the fan, we're gonna use that later. Now, while I'm over here, for the fan sensor, we need a standalone sensor for the Camaro fan setup. Got this, this combo on Amazon. It is the sensor and the little plug right here. I'll throw a part number and link to that in the video description. So now that we've got all that covered and hooked up, we're gonna come over here to this page. We have a bunch of wires coming off of our fan controller. We're only gonna use a few of them. So the red one is gonna go to a 12-volt switched power. So what this is gonna be is a fuse tap inside of our fuse box. M8 and M9 are both for heated seats. You can use a fuse tap to use for our red wire. Orange is what's going to go to that little wire that I just showed you on the fan. Black is gonna go to ground. Purple is going to go to that sensor, the positive, the red wire on that sensor we installed. Brown is gonna go to the black on that sensor, that's the sensor ground. And then white down here is override input. That is going to tap into our AC compressor line right there. So whenever you turn the AC on these Jeeps, your fan should kick on at like a low speed or 50%. So we're just gonna tap into that wire that plugs into our AC compressor from the Jeep Speed Shop wiring harness. So as you can tell, that's it. It's very, very simple. Now the great thing about this is we can control at what temps our fan kicks on. We have our low speed and our high speed. Let's go ahead and get this wired up. So all of the fan wires are hooked up except for my white one that goes down to my AC compressor. I'm gonna wire that in later. But I went ahead and added all the fittings on the intake, our air intake sensor, and the PCV, the vacuum line. So that is done. All we have left to do in this swap now is put the grill and bumper on and build the exhaust. So I'm gonna take a real quick break and then start building this exhaust. I'm not gonna go through step by step, but we're just gonna build it and show you the outcome because there's so many different options you can do. But the one thing that I am doing is reusing these little flanges from the 3.8 exhaust. The holes on these are exactly the same as the 5.7, so it's kind of perfect. The only thing I have to do is open up the holes a little bit bigger because it won't slide on there. This is for a smaller diameter exhaust tube. So I'm gonna open that up and then just weld it on like this. And I know it's not, like normally these collectors are like kind of flanged, but when I test fit it, since this is bigger, it kind of slides down a good bit. And when we suck it in with the bolts, I think it's gonna seal up good. So these are gonna be kind of like the pipes that go off the manifold. And then we're gonna put our cat there. We're gonna weld in some O2 bungs. We got a lot of work to do, but later tonight we're gonna tackle that. Some fast forward motion of a few welds, a few setups under there, and then fire up and go run it. So I have both sides, downpipes, collectors, whatever you want to call them. Both of them are made. What I would do or recommend for you guys is just kind of tack weld this as you build it. And once it's all the way done, pull it out and weld it up fully. That way, you know, if we weld this in and later on we realize, oh, we got to cut it off to move it. But this is looking pretty good. Got both sides done. We have to weld in O2 sensor bungs. So we have two O2 sensors on each side. We have our upstream and then downstream, one before the cat, one after the cat. You kind of want to move your before the cat down as far as you can. If you want, you don't want to do it up too high right near the exhaust manifold. You want to give it some room for all those exhaust gases to mix out of the engine. You also want to mount it if you're looking up under the Jeep, you want to mount the sensor up top. So in between like 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. If you mount it on the bottom side, it's gonna cause that sensor to fail sooner just because there's moisture being built up there and sitting on the sensor. So this, as you can tell, is probably at like the 10 or 11 o'clock position. And I got a set of weld-in O2 sensor bungs. So we're gonna go ahead and drill this out, put this on here, and weld it in place. And then once we build the rest of the exhaust, we're gonna do the same thing after the cat. So the exhaust is done for the most part. That literally took me all day. We're not even done with it. It's drivable as the exhaust sits now, but it's not where I'd want it to be. I'm not gonna be able to really finish up until I can move the Jeep, kind of position it back into the normal garage space so I can, you know, get under there with a welder and do a few other things. So let's check it out. You know, off the manifolds that come down to our Flowmaster catalytic converters. This side comes over here to our Y pipe. And this side, instead of the factory location going in front of the skid plate, just to have more room for the drive shaft, I went behind the skid plate. So I used flex pipe here just because it's kind of a weird bend where, I mean, now I could take this pipe off and kind of figure out how to make that bend, or take this to an exhaust shop and have them do this piece. Now, all of these clamps that you see, just those like the real easy, like tight, squish clamps, I'm not a big fan of those because once you take them off, the pipe is still deformed. So all of those eventually are gonna get switched out to like the V-band style. So for mock-up, it works, but we come to our Y pipe and then go to the hooker arrow chamber. So I'm gonna continue it that way too. But for now, I think that's gonna work. It's under there. I'll have to raise up that center section a little bit, but it should work with our skid plate. Now it's time for me to explain what in the world just happened. So I didn't film it. I was like, oh man, let me go ahead and top her off with coolant, top her off with power steering fluid. Well, not coolant, I'm still waiting on my coolant. I just put distilled water in there. So I topped both of those off, started it up just to hear the exhaust and make sure there are no huge air leaks or anything crazy, and let it run for a few minutes. Once it got up to temp, boof! The upper freaking hose clamp popped off. That dang thing. I hate these radiator hoses. So the garage is a complete mess full of distilled water everywhere. And I was having an issue with the power steering fluid. Whenever I turned the engine off, it was bubbling out of here. So if that happens to you, it's just because it wasn't bled properly. You have to let the engine idle for quite a while, turning your wheels left and right to really bleed air out of the system. I think there was air stuck in the power steering cooler, and it was just bubbling out those air bubbles. So yeah, but with the exhaust like finished in a way, that's it, guys. That's it. The next thing to do is just check all your fluids. We'll have to check the trans fluid in a little bit, and then take her out for a spin. So I think that's it for the night. What I'm probably gonna do, I guess, do you guys wanna hear it? Of course you do. Let's fire it up. You ready? What in the world? Uh-oh. Completely dead. Tell me my tip-em didn't get fried or something with all that water on it. Oh no. Uh-oh. Oh, my ground cable's loose. Whew, let's tighten that. Round two. Let's see. There we go. You guys ready to hear it? So you see what I'm saying about a nice deep rumble, but it's not extremely loud. It sounds so good. It is a little bit on the loud side, I'm not gonna lie, but this thing needs to sound like it has a 6.4, and it does. It's like thunder. I spent the night cleaning up the garage and kind of figure out a way to get this thing out of here so in the morning we can take her on a real quick test drive. We are ready to hit the road after we do two more things. So, coolant. I was cleaning out the cooling system, draining the radiator, flushing it with distilled water just because this engine it's old. It's from 2015, it's brand new. It was a crate engine, it hasn't been used, but from the factory, they did do, not factory, but it's a crate engine, so they tested, do the dyno run, and they fill it up with coolant back then in 2015. So then that leads us to our next predicament. So this is orange coolant. I was flushing it, and this is kind of like the remnants of it. Orange coolant is an HOAT, hybrid organic acid technology, I think that's it. And the other option for this 6.4 Hemi is the OAT coolant, which is purple, just the organic acid technology. You don't want to mix them. Horrible things happen, it clogs up your entire cooling system, no bueno. I had already bought purple coolant over here. So this is the OAT from Mopar. It's like one of a kind or something like that, which means I would have to do two things. Either flush this completely of all the HOAT, HOAT, I'm just gonna call it HOAT. I don't know what you call it. I'm calling it HOAT. We would have to flush this with distilled water like 20 times to get all the HOAT out and then add the purple stuff. Or we can continue running the HOAT, and that's probably what I'll do. Reason being, this stuff is a lot easier to find. You go to Napa, O'Reilly, Advance, they have orange HOAT. You go there and you ask for the purple Mopar OAT, they're like, what? No, you gotta order it from Mopar at a dealership or online which I did. So I'll return those and we're gonna swap over to this stuff. Now, if you get a new engine and you flush it a million times, technically you can run whatever kind of coolant you want. So that's up to you guys. Now the next thing is the special magical gold transmission fluid for these 8 speeds. So the only kind of fluid you can run in these, I mean, there might be some type of aftermarket one, but I don't know. I wouldn't trust it. This is the Mopar 8 and 9 speed ATF. This is special, $23 a quart kind of special. You can't run typical ATF. Now, the reason I have this all set up is because this bottle, it doesn't fit the little pump guy in there, so we had to clean this out, transfer it to there, then pump it into the transmission. The transmission has a fill plug on the side of it, and there's a special fill procedure for these things. It's not too difficult. What we have to do is fill it up out of that hole. Let me just show you. We're gonna undo it with an 8mm Allen. You'll see right there. Bloop. We're gonna pump it in there until it oozes out. Close it. Then we are gonna take it for a drive, or just back and forth here until the transmission gets up to temp. So you can just kind of idle and park, idle and drive, throw it in, just kind of throw it throughout, let the transmission get up to temp. Then we're gonna let the engine cool, let the transmission cool, come out an hour later and check it. Pump more up until it starts oozing out, cap it, do the same thing. So pretty much we have to get the transmission up to temp, whether it's here in the garage or out driving, let it cool off completely, and then add more. So it's pretty much just making sure all the fluid is circulated when it's warm, and then you check it when it's cold. All that is done. Now it's time to do a real quick test drive. So this engine is brand new. Like I said, I mean, it has like, what, 5 feet on it? So we can't just take her out today and rip, sadly. I want to do a break-in on this. That means today I'm going to drive it like 300 miles at least. Maybe not today, but break it in nice, and then the next video we can really start ripping on this thing. So I'm gonna finish up all this coolant and transmission stuff, and then we're gonna take her on a real quick test drive just to check the functionality and maybe get on it a little bit. But the next video is where we're really gonna have some fun. This is a sight I haven't seen in a long time. Oh my gosh, listen to my echo. But Cassie's LJ is gonna go right back in here. So everything looks good. We should be ready to roll. It's windy, it's gonna rain, but we're gonna take her on a quick test drive. Just listen to her. Oh yeah. All right, guys. Fingers crossed. Got a fire extinguisher just in case. Got to figure out this shifter boot situation, but it's gonna work. Oh my goodness. Ooh, baby, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I am a little bit nervous. The gearing is so nice. All right, we're in second. All right, third had a little weird shift to it. It probably has to learn all the shifts. We're gonna be easy on her for a little bit. See if we can get a fourth shift. Nice and crisp and clean fourth shift. Man, the RPMs just stay so low. That is awesome. Miles per gallon are gonna be good. I'm gonna pull up my JScan app so we can monitor the temps and everything. And the great thing is that with this Jeep Speed Shop ECU, we can run like our JScan and everything. So it's almost like sitting here, you wouldn't know that there was a change except for, you know, that and then the throttle. Let's do some live data. Oh my goodness, this feels so crazy. Everything's looking good on there. Intake temp's a little high. Turn our wipers on here. She sounds amazing. So like I said, guys, we're just breaking her in easy before we start getting on it. So I'm just gonna cruise around for a little bit. Here in about 10 minutes, maybe we'll give it a little bit of gas, see what she's got. Well, had to pull over. Yep, one of the coolant hoses that goes to the heater core back there popped off. So, luckily I'm not too far from home, but we gotta figure out how we're gonna get back there. Yeah, you can see it. You can see it right there. That popped off. Dang it. Drives so good too. All right, let's get home before all that leaks out of there. And we'll take it for another spin. The heater core hose was definitely my fault. I did not fully seat them all the way, and the hose clamp was just barely grasping on, asking for those things to be blown off. But with that fixed, let's go hit the road. What's up, Jeep Gladiator? Low end torque of this engine is just so freaking nice. You don't have to really get on it to accelerate. The Jeep just moves effortlessly. So far, this is insane. But I know what you guys really do want to see. Let's give it a little bit of gas. Oh man. Oh, she moves. I know you guys really want to see me get on this and floor it and have some fun with it, but still trying to break the engine in before we do anything crazy. But we'll do a real quick acceleration, not full throttle, but get on it a little bit. So let's just see, let's give it a little gas. So that's not full throttle. That was probably right at that last little blip. I gave it a good amount of gas, but she just moves. This is insane. Oh my gosh, I want to do a burnout so bad. But man, there's just, if you give it gas, the Jeep moves. It's just a little bit of gas. It just goes. It just moves. She has power. That is gonna be it for this video, guys. The Hemi swap is done. There's still a few things I'm gonna change up and a few things I'm gonna add. However, I know this video is already long enough, and I know you guys are ready to see this thing completely rip, not only on the street, but also off-road. So stay tuned for the next video where we're just gonna take this thing out and play. Cassie's coming home tomorrow, so it's gonna be her first time driving it. My kids have been extremely excited. They FaceTime me and they're like, oh, is the Hemi done? When they come home, I can't wait for them to hear it. So stay tuned for the next video, guys. Please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions on Hemi swaps in general, let me know in the comments. I know a lot of people are saying, Ben, how much money do you have into the swap? We're gonna add that up soon. I wanna make sure that everything is 100% done so we can go through a parts list, talk about, you know, cheaper ways to do it, more expensive ways to do it, and how much I have into this swap. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you later.